Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have Meagan here joining us live on the podcast and Zoomcast as a registered biodynamic craniosacral therapist, licensed massage therapist, a registered yoga teacher, and so much more. She owns the company. It's called the Wellness Nook. And if you go to the website, thewellnessnookqc.com, you'll get to know her more. But I think with today's interview, you will figure that all out. And it's exciting to have someone here who's really focused on, helping others. And we're going to talk about the different types of programs that she's offering. So first and foremost, Meagan, it's been a while. How have you been? Everything good?
Yeah, it's going good. I can't believe we're already in the middle of July and summertime is here.
And you're in Iowa, right?
Yes.
How's the
Yeah.
weather there? And
It's been
family's good?
family's good. The weather's been very hot and humid with crazy thunderstorms coming through. So it's been a wild ride, but it's been good. The garden is doing great. So I'm super happy about that.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about the Wellness Nook and, what you have to offer.
Sure. The Wellness Nook is my small business here in Davenport, Iowa. It is my baby that I've created over my years of experience with different healing arts modalities. So I offer therapeutic massage. I do biodynamic craniosacral therapy. I specialize in working with mothers and babies in pre and postnatal experience with both body work and craniosacral therapy. I do different types of body work, Thai body work with restorative yoga postures, and incorporate different things into my treatment, such as cupping therapy, hot stones. I've recently added working with sound therapy, so tuning forks, and just a whole variety of things going on in my practice.
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad everything is flourishing. I want to hear more about your experiences and, of course, all the different types of services that you offer.
Yes. Gosh, where do I begin? I think today I kind of wanted to focus more on the deeper side of healing that I'm very passionate about, which is helping people reach held trauma in their systems and how to support them in helping process that trauma and hopefully releasing pieces of trauma with each session that we do. So with the craniosacral therapy, I think the focus in that and the goal of that is to mainly hold support for the person's system to really relax, the nervous system to relax and settle, and then help that trauma that's stored in there to release little by little, nothing that's going to overwhelm their systems. And that can look like many different things in a session. And so I just kind of wanted to touch on what trauma is.
And the different forms and different types. Yeah, there's a lot of
There's
different
different
trauma.
types. The general overview of trauma is that it is an experience that someone has had happen to them, and it's too overwhelming for their system to fully process in that moment. And so therefore it gets their parasympathetic nervous system engaged, and it can't quite process that. And so that can then get stuck in the body, and then that can manifest in different ways for people if it's not dealt with in a proper way, or even dealt with at all. And so I guess the medical community or psychologists have categorized trauma in 3 different ways, and that's acute trauma, chronic trauma, and complex trauma. And I thought I would just kind of touch on those today a little bit and give examples of how I personally have experienced and dealt with certain types of trauma, and also experiences that I've had in my practice in craniosacral sessions and massage therapy sessions with this trauma, just to get a better idea of different types of trauma and how they can manifest in the body. So just starting with acute trauma, it's the most basic form, and it refers to a single isolated experience that happens to someone. So that can be any number of events that occurs through someone's life, starting with the very beginning. Your birth experience can be a traumatic experience that can happen and then not dealt with right away. And then that can manifest into other symptoms later on as you start to grow. Anyone who's been in a motor vehicle accident, it can be a traumatic experience, an acute traumatic experience, and a life-threatening situation, a loss of a loved one, being a part of a natural disaster, being a victim of sexual assault or rape, and any major injury that may occur can all be very traumatic for a person. And so it can have a profound impact, and people deal with these events differently. So some people can cause feelings of numbness and shock and disbelief. They may have deep feelings of grief, anger, confusion, and they can have also a blunted effect, which means they have difficulty expressing their emotions after an event like that can occur. And then over time, that can lead to having issues with anxiety, having panic attacks, loss of focus, being confused, extremely irritated, or just feeling disconnected with life, or even symptoms such as insomnia and sleep issues. So just kind of giving an example of that. And some people, when they have these acute trauma experiences, they are able to recover in a short amount of time. A lot of times it can take a long time for you to realize that you've accumulated trauma from this experience and need to work with releasing it. And so some people are diagnosed with PTSD after an acute traumatic experience, and some aren't and are able to go on with their lives just fine. I was trying to think of ways that and there's many examples I could give, I guess, of how I've had acute trauma come up in sessions. But in my life in particular, when I was doing my craniosacral training, I was asked to find out about my birth experience, which I did not quite know all the details about. So calling my mother and having that conversation and finding out that during her giving birth to me, I was stuck in her vaginal canal and I had my first meconium, which is kind of your first
Yeah.
poop, I guess.
Yep.
And so I did that while I was in her canal. And so I inhaled the meconium,
Oh,
which is very dangerous for baby. And it's also dangerous for mother because it's kind of a toxic
toxic.
substance
Yep.
that is then in her system. And so by the time I came out, I was immediately needed to be taken away to have my lungs pumped. And so that as a newborn baby, you're coming into this world and you do not have that chance to take your full breath,
First
your
breath.
first full
No.
breath in life. And so, of course, as I got older, I had no idea that this happened to me and didn't know how that could be affecting me in any way. But as soon as I heard this story from her, this light bulb went off in my brain. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting because as an adult, I definitely carry stress in my respiratory system, but I've developed asthma as an adult.
Hmm.
For the last 10 years, I've had to deal with that and just really have had issues with my respiratory system. That seems to be where things accumulate and holding on to grief there, having trouble releasing that. And so just realizing that and making that
Yeah.
connection from that very first experience in my life, and then having that awareness and then being able to focus on that when I got to receive or get to receive treatments. And it has become just having that awareness and working on it has been a big help in my life. So I thought that was really interesting. So that always makes me want to know people's birth experiences when they come in, just to have a
Yeah.
reference, if there's any connections that can be made during a session. Um, Another example is a woman that was a client of mine. So I just moved within this past year from Moab, Utah, here to Iowa. And I had my own practice there for 7 years. So I had a lot of long-term regular clients. And one woman in particular was in a car accident over 20 years ago. And since that accident, she's experienced seizures multiple times. I mean, every week she usually has
Oh,
some sort of small
wow.
seizure in her sleep. She can't drive, just for, certain things that she can't do in her day-to-day life because of this one car accident that she was in. And just getting biweekly treatments in massage therapy and
Mm-hmm.
craniosacral therapy really helps those symptoms and has helped lessen the amount of seizures that she has in at any given time. Just working regularly with her, it was really neat to hear her that she was getting not experiencing them as much and feeling relief. And also, from my knowledge, just understanding the inner workings of the brain more when something like that is happening for someone. So just knowing that, yes, that those motor vehicle accidents or something like that can be that acute trauma can affect someone's life over a long period of time, finding awareness in that, and then taking action on how to handle that trauma in your system. So those are just a couple examples of the acute trauma. And then the next type of trauma is called chronic trauma. And that's when people experience similar traumatic experiences over and over again. And again, survivors of this chronic trauma react differently depending on what's happened. But examples of chronic trauma are growing up in an abusive home, so childhood abuse,
Mm-hmm.
being involved in an abusive relationship, or relationships throughout your life, military combat, so being in war, having toxic friendships, experiencing homelessness, or maybe being diagnosed with a chronic illness and just dealing with that in your day-to-day life can accumulate into chronic trauma in your system. And when they are experience that over and over, you never get a chance to thoroughly deal with that traumatic experiences. And so therefore, a lot of times PTSD is diagnosed in a person's system. And yeah, I think the chronic trauma is something that happens to a lot of people, and then they deal with it differently as they get older. A couple examples that I have is working with someone that was in the Vietnam War and working with that system and realizing like, wow, they are really still stuck there and they are still very overwhelmed from that experience so long ago, and just how powerful that is to have been put in situations where it is life or death, and doing things that they maybe don't want to be doing. And so just really holding space for that person and really letting the nervous system just settle, and nothing, a little piece of help is going to occur every time, but it definitely takes multiple sessions and almost like lifelong work in order to be able to deal with those intense emotions in your day-to-day life. And then as far as chronic trauma with a chronic illness, I've had a client who is experiencing rheumatoid arthritis and having it
Uh, I
really
have a
affect them.
friend that has that. I had no idea what it was, and then when she told me it's a friend of a friend, and I was like, "What? This type of pain? It's so hard for her to live a normal life with this. How? Wow! Can you just share does it help? What is the
Yeah.
process?
So, especially, well, massage therapy can be great for arthritis just to bring some
Hmm.
circulation into the joint areas
Okay.
and to help get some of that inflammation to settle down. The craniosacral therapy is really lovely for any sort of autoimmune disorder like that, where you can get the nervous system to settle, and that can just start to help regulate everything else in your body. So it's really good for the inflammation that happens with rheumatoid arthritis.
Can you hear us, Megan? Hey, Megan. So we're talking about traumas here. Yeah, we rebooted here for some reason, but welcome
Okay.
back. So we were talking about different types of trauma. We were
Sure.
into the chronic trauma, and we were talking rheumatoid arthritis, and then that's where I lost you.
Yeah, so just talking about how the craniosacral work can be really beneficial for diseases like that because it helps downregulate the nervous system. It lets them know that they're in a safe place and their body starts reacting to that being able to lessen inflammation, to just let them come back to an inherent sense of health in their systems, and just letting that um, relieve symptoms how they can, working in multiple sessions like that. So that's been, and working with different diseases like that, as well as like Parkinson's disease comes to mind, where just the craniosacral work can just be really, it's a very gentle modality that's holding space with gentle holds on the body in order for the system to really settle in, and then it chooses what piece of trauma it wants to deal with that day in order to let their systems come into balance. Um,
Beautiful.
yeah, it is really beautiful. Just,
And
I'm
at
in
this,
awe of the work. I
no,
try to find the language to explain it, but it's really just a modality that branches off of osteopathic medicine and just has evolved here over the last 50 years to just be something really lovely. Um, but I'm going to go into the third type of
sure.
trauma that's categorized, and that's complex trauma. And that's the most sweeping and wide reaching form of trauma. And it's a term that describes both traumatic events themselves and then the person's response to that trauma.
Okay.
So, an example would be a person who grew up in an abusive household and may have experienced the chronic trauma as a child. And then as an adult, they have developed mental health disorders because of
Mental health disorders. I heard that much, Megan. Mental health disorders is how we left off.
um let's see. So yeah, just that complex trauma of having trauma as a child and then making decisions as an adult that continues that trauma cycle. And so just recognizing that and finding that support that you need in order to start unwind that
Yep.
spiraling trauma that occurs. Um, I can think of a few examples of people that have come to me and are just wanting that space to just
Yep.
settle in. And I find there's different qualities of energy in people's systems when I am working with them. And when someone is so wound up in that fight or fight mode because of this complex trauma that's they've been dealing with since they were children, it is you really have to just recognize that, like, in this one session, maybe we're just sitting here and allowing that person to just breathe, and they're not really even going to be able to fully settle in and let their nervous system relax, and just you can just feel it that they're, I call it, my teacher called it, there's a lot of swimmers in the pool. You can just feel it in their system. It's really buzzy, and they just don't know how to mentally even let go. And so just recognizing that, allowing them, having conversations, knowing, having them recognize what they can do in their own lives to help bring a sense of feeling resourced in their life, whether that's even just taking time to like take a bath once a day, or taking time for yourself in whatever way that feels good, reading a book, going for a walk, and then doing these treatments that can help you as well.
Well, also, what I
For
love about,
anyone, just be good to recognize
oh,
and
little delay.
oh no,
Sorry,
go ahead.
sorry. No, about all the work and the way you're able to help people. I know we talked in the past, you've given me some client examples, and I love there's great testimonials. For example, Susan from Utah says, I've been going to you for massage therapy, biodynamic craniosacral practice sessions for years. I love all the different modalities that you use and have been so useful for me. I've enjoyed the variety of things that are incorporated into each session, and you are grounded, calm, and have the most healing hands, which is amazing. Someone else talked about how they had really long well, COVID and extra symptoms, and they needed some, they had a lot of headaches, and you helped them with your touch after just one session of working with you. But again, continued to do so and felt so much better and felt healed. And this is Gigi in the head and nervous system, and they say that you're like a natural healer. And you deeply tune in to signals of the body for healing. So people really appreciate this work you're doing. Whether you're pregnant, not pregnant, there's some great testimonials. I just want to point that out. And if you want to share one or two with trauma, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, you brought up both of those women and their testimonials. And uh, just sharing with Susan, she was a client of mine in Moab, and we recently have started doing distance craniosacral sessions, which has been awesome. So it is possible to work with someone from all over the world, anywhere with craniosacral therapy. I know that there's other energy healing modalities, or people can do it distance wise, and craniosacral is something that just over COVID, the pandemic, practitioners realized that it is just as effective from distance as well. So Susan and I have been working together, and oh my gosh, we have had some amazing sessions where I'm in my office when I do these distance sessions, and we're usually it's either Zoom or over the phone. And I just kind of pretend that that person is right in front of me on my table, and I'm can still tune in to their body and systems, and be guided to where I need to bring my attention and hold it. And Susan is someone that has dealt with chronic fatigue for a long time, and just her system can get easily worked up. And feel stressed. And so we've just had some great sessions where we're able to work with her this long distance. And that has been amazing, just getting to continue work with some of my clients from that were somewhere else. With Gigi, we've also had this amazing experience in addition from her having COVID, but this brought up another type of trauma that we can be holding on to and not realizing, and that can be past life trauma. And I don't have a lot of experience with this. I've been curious about it. Gigi herself is a hypnotherapist. And so
Gigi, our hypnotherapist. I heard that much. At the wellnessnookqc.com. That's the website. If you are listening, I know we have some technical issues. We're getting through it. It's all good. But today we
could
are learning.
smell, she
There
could
we
smell
go.
smoke in her, she could smell, she said she could smell like firewood smoke. And she thought it was really interesting. And all of a sudden she was kind of brought back into a past life, and she's like, I'm this
Wow.
man on the table, and you are this healer, and we're in like feels like hundreds of years ago. We're in this cabin like in Norway or something. And she's like, I'm just trying to feel like why. And then she had this thing where this person she was in this past life had had a head injury out hunting and had fallen and hit their head. And he immediately came back to this healer. And she was like, you were definitely this healer in a past life. And so I kind of just started trying to tune into this because I was just letting her explain what she was experiencing. And then as I was tuning into that, all of a sudden I could like see, I could understand where she was coming from. And so we just held, I was this other healer and she was this person with a head injury, and we just like held this space for these people, and I could feel it in her head of just this trauma
Yeah.
releasing, and we had this lovely experience. And afterwards we were just like, what was that, how cool. I've never experienced anything like that before. And then I get home later that night and give my husband a hug, and
Oh,
he says your hands smell like smoke. And yes. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like, this
wow.
happened. And so it was this whole mind opening experience for me. I was like, wow, we can even access this deeper realm of trauma from who knows when, that we can
Yeah.
be holding on to for lifetimes. And it's fascinating to me. And so that's when I realized in every session, you just never know what can come up and what
Well, this is fascinating work. And I know, we took a little hiatus here, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you, hearing these stories, these testimonials of truly of how you helped so many people. And let's just point out
Ancestor
again,
trauma.
thank
Oh
you.
yeah,
Yes, we are unfortunately out of time, and I know we have a little bit of connection issue here. So I appreciate. I heard the testimonial, and wow, it's flabbergasting to hear that. So you can pick this up. How can we reach out to you if you don't mind? Would you mind sharing all the ways, phone number, website, etc.?
yes. My website is thewellnessnookqc.com. My phone number is 563-477-4500.
Great,
And Instagram is at the Wellness Nook QC. And those are probably
beautiful.
the three main ways to contact me or get more information.
Well, we appreciate your time here again, Megan. As always, great getting to see you, and hopefully we'll be back in touch next week. Are we back on?
Yep, we are. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much for
then.
being here and great
No problem.
energy
Thank you.
today. And we'll chat next week. Enjoy your Monday.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.